Deep beneath the surface of Vexithara, in chambers that predated the Zenthari Empire by millions of years, Emperor Krathmok stood before the Omega device. The ancient weapon was a crystalline construct the size of a building, its faceted surfaces pulsing with energies that made reality itself seem unstable around it. This artifact had been left behind by the Zenthari's own creators, a species so advanced that they had transcended physical existence eons ago. For 500,000 years, this weapon has remained unused. The Emperor spoke to his assembled war council, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber's otherworldly acoustics. The threat of its existence has been sufficient to maintain order throughout the galaxy, but these mammals have proven that conventional threats mean nothing to them. War Herald Vextaki studied the readings from biomechanical interfaces grafted into the ancient machinery. Divine Emperor, the device is drawing power from our planet's core. Once the charging sequence completes, it will destabilize the Sol system star. The resulting black hole will consume everything within 17 light-years. Krathmok's scaled features twisted into an expression of savage satisfaction. Let the humans watch their star die. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the eternal empire. If we cannot rule, then let there be nothing left for anyone to rule. The charging sequence would take 72 hours, during which the device would draw increasingly massive amounts of energy from Vexithara's stellar core. The process was irreversible once begun, which meant the Emperor was gambling his own world's stability on his ability to destroy humanity before they could retaliate. Admiral Beth Cameron received the intelligence through the compromised Zenthari networks that Captain Johnson's infiltration teams had established. The information reached Earth through quantum communication relays that operated faster than light, giving humanity advance warning of their species' potential extinction. 72 hours until activation, she reported to the emergency session of Earth's Defense Council. Once the device fires, our sun will begin collapsing into a black hole. Estimated time to total system consumption, 6 months. President Carol Martinez listened to the briefing from her secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, her face pale but determined. Around the conference table sat the leaders of humanity's greatest minds and strongest institutions, all focused on finding a solution to an impossible problem. Options? The president asked simply. General Patricia Wells spoke first, her military bearing unchanged despite the circumstances. Conventional assault on Vexithara is impossible. They have 17 defensive fleets surrounding the planet, plus orbital weapons platforms that could sterilize our entire navy. Dr. Kevin Ross adjusted his glasses nervously as he consulted his research data. The Omega device operates by manipulating fundamental forces at the quantum level. Theoretically, it might be possible to reverse or redirect its effects, but we would need to understand technology that's millions of years more advanced than ours. Actually, said Dr. Helen Moore, looking up from her biological warfare research, we might not need to understand it completely. Our infiltration teams have been inside their systems for weeks. We know how their biomechanical interfaces work. If we can't stop the device, maybe we can change what it targets. The room fell silent as the implications of her suggestion became clear. Dr. Amy Patterson, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, was the first to speak. You're talking about turning their ultimate weapon against them. More than that, Helen replied, pulling up holographic displays of Zenthari biotechnology. I'm talking about using their own biological systems to rewrite the targeting parameters. Instead of destroying Sol, the device could target Vexithara itself. The plan that emerged from the emergency session was audacious beyond anything humanity had attempted before. Captain Ron Martinez would lead a single ship on what everyone understood to be a suicide mission, carrying Dr. Moore's biological warfare package directly to the Omega device's control systems. The ship will need to survive 17 fleet engagements and penetrate planetary defenses that have never been breached, Martinez said calmly, studying the tactical projections. Once we reach the device, we'll have maybe 10 minutes to introduce the viral programs before they adapt their security systems. His vessel, rechristened the Prometheus for this final mission, incorporated every technological advance humanity had developed during their war with the Zenthari. The ship's hull was grown from modified alien biomatter that could regenerate damage and adapt to new threats. Its weapons combined human kinetic technology with captured energy systems. Most importantly, its computers carried viral programs, designed to rewrite Xanthari biological networks at the genetic level. The journey to Vexithara took 58 hours, leaving barely 14 hours before the Omega device reached full activation. Martinez's ship traveled through hyperspace using routes mapped by human infiltration teams, emerging directly in the Xanthari home system's inner regions, where their defenses were strongest. 17 enemy fleets detected, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sam Parker, her voice steady despite the impossible odds they faced. They're moving to intercept. Estimated time to weapons range, 30 minutes. All stations prepare for combat, Martinez ordered, feeling the ship's biomechanical systems respond to his neural commands. The Prometheus had been designed to interface directly with its captain's nervous system, creating a symbiosis between human intuition and alien biotechnology that neither species could have achieved alone. The running battle through the Vexithara system lasted 8 hours and showcased everything humanity had learned about warfare against the Xanthari Empire. The Prometheus fought not like a single ship, but like a living creature that could adapt to any threat. When Xanthari bioships tried to overwhelm it with numbers, the human vessel used their own biological weapons against them. When they attempted to trap it with gravitational fields, it phased through space using modified quantum drives. Emperor Krathmok watched the approaching ship from his palace's observation chamber, his biomechanical implants sparking with overload as his emotional state reached dangerous levels. "One ship," he raged. "One primitive mammal vessel is cutting through our entire defense network." "Divine Emperor," War Herald Vextaki reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Their ship appears to be using our own biotechnology, but modified beyond our understanding. Our weapons are having minimal effect." The Prometheus reached Vexithara's surface with less than 4 hours remaining before the Omega device achieved full activation. Martinez's ship had been reduced to barely functional systems, its biohull regenerating damage even as new wounds appeared, but it had survived long enough to reach its target. Dr. Helen Moore's viral programs activated the moment the ship's biomechanical systems made contact with the Omega device's control networks. The human-designed organisms spread through Xanthari, computer systems like wildfire, rewriting genetic programming and altering target parameters with surgical precision. "Upload successful," reported the ship's AI, its voice distorted by damage to communication systems. "Viral programs are active and spreading. Omega device targeting has been modified." Emperor Krathmok felt the change through his biomechanical connection to the palace systems. The ancient weapon that should have been targeting Sol had turned its attention to Vexithara itself, preparing to collapse the Xanthari homeworld star instead of Earth's sun. "Impossible," he screamed, his rage causing biomechanical systems throughout the palace to overload and fail. "Shut down the device. Abort the firing sequence." But the human viral programs had been designed specifically to prevent that possibility. They spread through every connected system, creating redundant pathways that ensured the modified targeting would remain unchanged. The Omega device, powered by technology that transcended Xanthari understanding, continued its charging sequence with new parameters that would doom the Empire's capital world. The final moments of the Xanthari Empire were broadcast across the galaxy through the same communication networks the Emperor had used to boast of his conquests. Species that had cowered in fear for 500,000 years watched as Vexithara's star began the process of stellar collapse, its outer layers cooling as gravitational forces overwhelmed nuclear fusion. Emperor Krathmok stood in his collapsing palace as biomechanical systems failed around him. The living walls that had pulsed with his heartbeat for centuries went dark and still. His crystalline scales, enhanced by genetic modifications perfected over millennia, began to revert to their primitive state, as the technology that maintained them lost power. 500,000 years, he whispered to the empty chamber, his voice no longer carrying the harmonics of absolute authority. 500,000 years of conquest, ended by mammals who have barely learned to leave their world. The stellar collapse process took 6 months, during which the Zenthari Empire's command structure completely disintegrated. Without their homeworld and emperor, the various fleets and colonies that had maintained galactic order for so long began fighting among themselves or surrendering to local resistance movements. The destruction of the Great Armada sent shockwaves through every corner of the Zenthari Empire. On the capital world of Vexthara, Emperor Krathmok stood among the ruins of his war room, biomechanical displays flickering with damage reports from across his fleet. The living walls of his palace had dimmed to near darkness, responding to the Emperor's rage and humiliation with biological changes that reflected his emotional state. Impossible, he repeated for the 100th time, his crystalline scales shifting, through colors that indicated profound distress. 500,000 years of conquest, and these mammals have destroyed our greatest fleet in mere days. War Herald Vextaki approached carefully, his own biomechanical sensors detecting dangerous levels of stress hormones in the Emperor's system. Divine Emperor, perhaps we have underestimated these humans. Their technology appears more advanced than our initial assessments indicated. Krathmok's laugh carried harmonics that made the palace walls contract in fear. Advanced? They use metal projectiles and primitive computers. But if conventional conquest will not work, then we shall employ the final solution. The Emperor's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than his loudest roar. Ready the harvester fleets. If we cannot rule these mammals, we will erase them from existence. The harvesters represented the Zenthari Empire's darkest capability, biomechanical swarms designed for complete planetary sterilization. Unlike their regular war fleets that sought to conquer and enslave, the harvesters consumed everything organic on a world, leaving behind dead rock suitable only for Zenthari colonization. In 500,000 years, no species had ever survived a harvester deployment. Admiral Beth Cameron received the intelligence reports from her flagship at the edge of human space, where new colonies pushed the boundaries of Earth's growing influence. The veteran officer had been promoted to lead humanity's rapid expansion program, establishing outposts and research stations throughout the local stellar group. Her short blonde hair and blue eyes reflected the calm competence that had made her one of Earth's most trusted commanders. "Ma'am," reported her intelligence officer, Lieutenant Commander Jenny Walsh. "Hydrani sources confirm Zenthari fleet movements. 17 separate armadas, each targeting one of our outer colonies. They're not trying to conquer anymore." Beth studied the tactical displays showing Zenthari bioships moving toward human settlements across dozens of star systems. These weren't the massive dreadnoughts they had faced before, but smaller vessels designed for a different kind of warfare. They want to wipe us out completely. Classic scorched earth strategy. The first harvester attack struck the research colony on Kepler 442b, where 300 human scientists studied exotic plant life that might lead to new medical breakthroughs. Colonel Tim Davis commanded the small defense force stationed there, watching through his command center's windows as alien bioships descended through the planet's atmosphere like living meteors. "All personnel to emergency shelters," he ordered, though he knew the reinforced bunkers wouldn't protect them for long against harvester swarms. "Send the final data transmission to Earth Command. Make sure they know what hit us." But the expected annihilation didn't come. Instead, the Zenthari bioships found themselves under attack from weapons they couldn't see or understand. Human, stealth vessels materialized from empty space, their hulls coated with adaptive camouflage that made them invisible to Zenthari sensors. The alien harvesters, designed to face helpless civilian populations, couldn't adapt quickly enough to military resistance. Captain Steve Johnson led the stealth flotilla that had been positioned around every human colony, waiting for exactly this kind of attack. His ship, the Shadow Dancer, used technology that bent light and electromagnetic radiation around its hull, making it effectively invisible until it chose to strike. "All units, weapons free," he transmitted to his scattered force. "Priority targets are the bioprocessing nodes. Cut off their ability to convert organic matter and their just oversized transports." The human counterattack revealed the true extent of their technological development during the months since first contact. While the Zenthari had remained static in their approach to warfare, Humanity had been adapting and improving at an exponential rate. Their ships now incorporated captured biotechnology, but modified and enhanced beyond anything the aliens could imagine. Dr. Helen Moore's Biological Warfare Division had spent weeks developing viruses specifically designed to target Xanthari genetic patterns. Her modified organisms spread through alien bioships like digital viruses through computer networks, rewriting their genetic programming and turning their own biological systems against them. Harvester Fleet 7 is showing system failures. She reported from her laboratory complex on Mars. Their bioships are rejecting their own organic components. Estimated time to complete breakdown, 6 hours. The most shocking development came when human forces began appearing in Xanthari space itself, striking at the Empire's own worlds with surgical precision. Commander Janet Lewis led special operations teams that had infiltrated alien territory, using captured bioships modified with human technology. Her mission was not conquest, but liberation. Nexarian resistance cells are responding to our contact protocols, she transmitted from the slave world of Korvac Prime. They've been waiting 300,000 years for someone to challenge Xanthari rule. They're ready to fight. The galaxy watched in amazement as species thought extinct for millennia emerged from hidden refuges to join human forces. The Valdorian survivors, who had spent 200,000 years in deep space habitats, brought with them technological knowledge that predated Xanthari conquest. The proud Nexarian warrior clans, enslaved for even longer, provided fighting skills that complemented human tactical innovation. Nexarian war chief Thakmor stood alongside Commander Lewis in the ruins of a Xanthari biofactory, his scaled hide bearing scars from centuries of forced labor. For 500,000 years we believed the galaxy belonged to them forever. Your species has shown us that even the eternal can fall. But the most devastating blow to Xanthari confidence came when Captain Johnson's stealth forces penetrated the defenses of Vexthara itself. The infiltration mission succeeded beyond all expectations, placing monitoring devices in the very heart of the Imperial Palace and demonstrating that nowhere in the galaxy was beyond human reach. Surveillance packages are active, Johnson reported, from his hidden position in the capital city's biomechanical infrastructure. We're recording everything: troop movements, communication protocols, even the Emperor's private conversations. They have no secrets from us now. Emperor Krathmok's rage reached dangerous levels when his security forces discovered the human devices. For the first time in his long life, the absolute ruler of the galaxy felt vulnerable in his own palace. The biomechanical walls around him pulsed with his elevated stress levels, their living system struggling to process the chemical cocktail of fear and fury that flooded his bloodstream. How? He demanded of his cowering advisors. How did primitive mammals penetrate defenses that have protected this palace for 500,000 years? The answer came from an unexpected source: his own biomechanical monitoring systems, now compromised by human infiltration. The devices transmitted the Emperor's words directly to human intelligence, providing real-time information about Xanthari command decisions. War Herald Vextaki studied the security reports with growing concern. Divine Emperor, these humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They do not seek to match our strength with their own. Instead, they attack our weaknesses and turn our advantages against us. Then we will show them the price of defying. The Eternal Empire, Krathmok declared, his voice carrying harmonics of desperate fury. Ready the Omega device. If we cannot rule this galaxy, then let there be nothing left to rule. The Omega device was the Xanthari's ultimate weapon, an ancient artifact inherited from their own extinct creators. It could trigger stellar collapse, turning stars into black holes that would consume everything within light years. In 500,000 years, the Empire had never needed to use it, because the threat alone was sufficient to ensure submission. But the humans had already proven they didn't respond to threats the way other species did. As the device began its charging sequence in the depths of Vexithara, drawing power from the planet's own stellar core, Admiral Beth Cameron received the intelligence through compromised Xanthari networks. They're activating something called the Omega device, she reported to Earth Command. Our analysis suggests it's a stellar destabilization weapon targeting Sol itself. General Patricia Wells reviewed the data from her command center beneath Luna's surface, her experienced mind calculating odds that seemed impossible to overcome. How long until it's operational? Estimated charging time, 72 hours, came the response from Dr. Kevin Ross, who was analyzing the weapon's energy signatures. Once activated, it will cause our sun to collapse into a black hole. The entire solar system will be consumed. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zenthari were willing to destroy entire star systems to maintain their empire's reputation. The biomechanical walls of Emperor Krathmok's throne room pulsed with agitated rhythms as the reports came in from Fleet Commander Zek Thanos. The massive Zenthari ruler stood motionless for several minutes, his crystalline scales shifting through colors that indicated profound rage. Around him, the living architecture of his palace seemed to sense his mood, dimming its bioluminescent displays in response to his emotional state. Impossible, the Emperor finally spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. A scout fleet defeated by primitives? These mammals have existed for less than a cosmic heartbeat. Their technology should be nothing compared to our bioships. War Herald Vextaki approached the throne carefully, his own biomechanical modifications allowing him to monitor the Emperor's stress levels through chemical sensors. The reports are confirmed, Divine Emperor. 3 dreadnoughts lost, others damaged. The humans use kinetic weapons at velocities we did not anticipate. Krathmok's laugh echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. Kinetic weapons? They defeated our bioarmor with metal projectiles? The Emperor's rage shifted into something more dangerous: personal interest. These mammals may provide more entertainment than expected. Ready the Great Armada. Every fleet, every weapon, every bioship we can spare. I will personally oversee the conquest of this Sol system. 3 weeks later, the largest Zenthari fleet assembled in 50,000 years began its journey toward human space. Over 3,000 bioships formed a living constellation of death, their organic hulls bristling with weapons that had conquered countless worlds. The armada stretched across light years of space, moving in formations that resembled vast sea creatures swimming through the cosmic void. General Patricia Wells stood in the newly constructed command center buried deep beneath Luna's surface, watching the tactical displays that showed the approaching alien force. The veteran officer had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Terran Defense after the first engagement, and she carried the weight of her species' survival on her shoulders. Her graying hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes reflected both determination and the careful calculation of someone who understood impossible odds. "Ma'am," reported Communications Officer Ryan Clark, his young face pale with stress. Long-range sensors confirmed the fleet composition. 3,000 plus contacts, mass estimates ranging from cruiser to super dreadnought class, ETA to Sol, system perimeter, 72 hours. Patricia nodded, activating the quantum communication network that connected Earth's defenses. All stations, this is command. Operation Prometheus is now active. Repeat, Operation Prometheus is active. Across the solar system. Humanity's response began to unfold. For 3 months since the Emperor's broadcast, human scientists and engineers had worked in secret, developing technologies that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Dr. Kevin Ross, the theoretical physicist who led the Black Projects division, watched from his laboratory on Ceres as his creations came online. Prometheus networks are responding, he reported to General Wells through encrypted channels. Drone fabrication facilities are at maximum output. We'll have the numbers we need. The first phase of humanity's defense became visible as the Zenthari fleet entered the outer solar system. What appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with movement as thousands of automated drones emerged from hidden manufacturing stations scattered throughout the asteroid belt. These were not the bulky robots that other galactic species used, but sleek machines the size of fighter craft, each one guided by artificial intelligence that could adapt and learn in real time. Engineer Lisa Brooks monitored the drone deployment from her control station on Vesta. The young woman had spent months perfecting the AI systems that guided humanity's mechanical defenders, drawing inspiration from Earth's natural swarms like schools of fish and flocks of birds. Her drones moved in coordinated patterns that confused traditional targeting systems. "First contact in 30 minutes, she reported, watching as her mechanical children prepared to face an enemy that had never known defeat. Swarm intelligence is active and learning. They're already adapting to Xanthari bioship signatures. The initial engagement began at the orbit of Neptune, where advanced Xanthari scouts encountered the first wave of human drones. The aliens expected easy victories against primitive machines, but the human AI had studied the previous battle data and identified specific weaknesses in Xanthari bioarmor. Where traditional weapons targeted the strongest parts of alien hulls, the drones focused on organic weak points, sensor clusters, atmospheric seals, and the biomechanical interfaces that connected different chip systems. They attacked in coordinated swarms that overwhelmed point defenses, with each destroyed drone transmitting its learning to others in the network. Admiral Kexathul, commanding the Armada's advance guard, watched in growing concern as his bioships suffered damage from opponents that shouldn't have posed any threat. "These machines fight unlike anything we have encountered," he reported to the Emperor. "They target specific biological vulnerabilities and coordinate their attacks with impossible precision." "Press forward," came Krathmok's reply from the fleet center. "Primitive machines cannot stand against the might of the Eternal Empire. Deploy biofighters and clear these insects from our path." The Xanthari response involved releasing millions of biomechanical fighters, living creatures bred specifically for space combat. These organic ships moved like sharks through the void, their biological systems allowing them to heal damage and adapt to new threats. In previous conquests, they had swept away entire enemy fleets, but the human drones were different. They didn't fight like living creatures bound by instinct and biological limitations. Instead, they used pure logic and mathematical precision to exploit every weakness in their opponents. When biofighters adapted to one attack pattern, the drones immediately shifted to another, staying ahead of biological evolution through digital evolution. The running battle continued for hours as the Xanthari fleet pushed deeper into the solar system. They lost hundreds of bioships to the swarming drones, but their numbers were so vast that they continued advancing. Emperor Krathmok himself arrived at Jupiter's orbit, his flagship a biomechanical monster the size of a small moon. "Enough games," the Emperor declared, his voice transmitted across his entire fleet. "Deploy the consuming swarms. Strip every piece of matter in this system down to its component atoms." The Xanthari's most terrible weapons emerged from the depths of their bioships, organism clouds that could consume any form of matter and convert it into more bioships. These living weapons had ended countless civilizations, turning entire star systems into Xanthari breeding grounds. But as the alien swarms spread outward from their host ships, they encountered something unexpected. Captain Ron Martinez led humanity's newest vessels into battle, ships that looked impossibly small compared to Xanthari dreadnoughts, but moved through space like living things themselves. These human craft used technology that the Xanthari had, abandoned millions of years ago, the willingness to try completely new approaches to old problems. Where the aliens relied on biological solutions that had worked for 500,000 years, humans combined organic and mechanical systems in ways that created entirely new capabilities. "All ships, execute Pattern Delta," Martinez commanded, his vessel dancing between plasma streams that should have vaporized it instantly. "Target the swarm nodes and disrupt their communication networks." The human ships struck at the consuming swarms with weapons that combined kinetic penetrators with viral programs designed to disrupt biological computer systems. Where the aliens expected brute force, they faced surgical precision that turned their own adaptability against them. Dr. Helen Moore watched the battle from her laboratory on Mars, monitoring the biological samples she had captured from previous engagements. The xenobiologist had spent weeks learning how Xanthari organisms functioned, and she had developed countermeasures that attacked their genetic programming at the molecular level. Deploying biological warfare countermeasures, she reported as her modified viruses spread through the alien swarms. "Their bioships are trying to adapt, but we're introducing changes faster than they can evolve defenses." The tide of battle began to turn as human innovations proved superior to ancient Xanthari might. The alien bioships, evolved for fighting, conventional enemies couldn't adapt quickly enough to human unpredictability. Their organic systems, optimized over millions of years, became liabilities when faced with opponents who refused to fight according to established patterns. Emperor Krathmok watched from his flagship as his great armada, the pride of his empire, began to disintegrate under human assault. Ships that had conquered galaxies were reduced to drifting biological matter by opponents they should have been able to crush without effort. "This is impossible," the Emperor raged, his biomechanical implants sparking with overload as his emotional state spiked beyond safe parameters. "We are the Zenthari. We have ruled for 500,000 years. These primitives cannot defeat us." But they were defeating him. As the 72nd hour of battle ended, over 1,000 Zenthari bioships floated dead in space while human losses numbered in the dozens. 3 months after Emperor Krathmok's galaxy-wide broadcast, the first Zenthari scout fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 12 massive bioships drifted between the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. Each vessel stretched over 2 kilometers in length, their surfaces covered in what looked like chitinous armor plates that shifted and moved like living skin. Fleet Commander Zek Thanos stood in the nerve center of his flagship, surrounded by walls of living tissue that served as both structure and computer interface. The Zenthari officer was typical of his species. Tall, scaled, and bearing the genetic modifications that marked him as a member of the warrior caste. Biomechanical implants covered half his face, giving him enhanced vision and direct neural links to his ship's biological systems. "Target confirmed," reported his sensor operator, a smaller Zenthari whose body had been extensively modified for ship operations. Tendrils grew from her fingers, allowing direct interface with the ship's nervous system. 1 inhabited world, several smaller colonies, primitive technology level, estimated conquest time, less than 1 planetary rotation. Zekathanos nodded, his forked tongue tasting the air. The ship's atmosphere carried pheromones that would terrify most species, but to the Zenthari they smelled of home and victory. "Begin standard approach. Transmit surrender demands to the primary world. If they resist, we will demonstrate the price of defying the Empire." The Zenthari fleet began moving inward toward Earth, their bioships leaving trails of exotic particles that made them visible to human sensors long before they entered the inner system. On Mars, alarms began sounding in the Terran Defense Force Command Center as duty officers scrambled to verify what their instruments were telling them. 12. Large contacts moving at 0.7 light speed, reported Lieutenant Ryan Clark, his voice tight with controlled tension. "Mass estimates put them at Dreadnought class or larger. They're not responding to our identification requests." Commander Dan Hughes received the alert while conducting a routine patrol near Titan aboard the patrol vessel Defiant. The former, NASA pilot, had volunteered for military service when humanity joined the galactic community, knowing that contact with alien civilizations might not always be peaceful. His ship was small by galactic standards, barely 300 meters long, but it represented the cutting edge of human technology. "Defiant to Mars Command," Dan transmitted, watching his tactical display update with new contacts. "I'm closest to the incoming fleet, requesting permission to intercept and attempt communication." General Rodriguez's voice came back immediately, carrying the weight of decision. "Permission granted, Commander, but keep your distance and be ready to run if they show hostile intent." Dan smiled grimly as he adjusted his ship's course. The Defiant was built for speed and maneuverability rather than heavy combat, but it carried some surprises that the aliens wouldn't expect. Human engineers had been busy in the 3 months since the Emperor's broadcast, working around the clock to adapt Earth's technology for potential conflict. The Zenthari fleet detected the approaching human vessel when it was still millions of kilometers away. Fleet Commander Zek Thanos studied the readings with amusement, noting how small and primitive the ship appeared compared to his bio-dreadnoughts. "A single vessel approaches," his sensor operator reported. "Mass approximately 50,000 tons, minimal weapon signatures, crew of less than 100. They appear to be attempting communication." "Answer them," Zek Thanos ordered, settling back into his command throne. The chair was grown from living coral that had been bioengineered to interface with his nervous system, allowing him to feel every aspect of his ship's condition. Let us see how these mammals react to the voice of their new masters. The communication channel opened with a burst of static as the two very different technologies attempted to find common ground. Dan Hughes appeared on the Xanthari screens as a flickering hologram, his uniform crisp and his expression calm despite the impossible odds he faced. Unknown vessels. This is Commander Dan Hughes of the Terran Defense Force vessel Defiant. You are entering Sol system space without authorization. Please state your intentions and prepare to be escorted to quarantine stations for processing. Zek Thanos laughed, the sound carrying harmonics that would have paralyzed most species with fear. Primitive mammal, you speak to Fleet Commander, Zek Thanos of the Eternal Xanthari Empire. We have come to claim your worlds and your species for our empire. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Dan's expression didn't change, though those who knew him well might have noticed a slight tightening around his eyes. I'm afraid that's not acceptable, Commander. I'm going to have to ask you to turn around and leave our system. You dare refuse the Xanthari Empire? Zek Thanos rose from his throne, his biomechanical implants flaring with angry light. Your pathetic vessel is outnumbered 12-1. We will tear you apart and use your remains to fertilize our breeding pools. Counteroffer, Dan replied, his hands moving to his ship's weapon controls. Leave now and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. The fleet commander's rage echoed through his ship's living corridors, causing the biomechanical systems to pulse faster in response to his elevated stress hormones. Destroy that insect. Show these mammals the fate that awaits all who oppose the Empire. The Xanthari bioships opened fire simultaneously, their plasma weapons creating brilliant streams of superheated matter that should have vaporized the human vessel instantly. Instead, Dan's ship seemed to dance between the energy beams, moving, with an agility that defied the laws of physics as the Xanthari understood them. The Defiant's quantum drive allowed maneuvers that would have torn apart any conventional spacecraft. Dan pulled acceleration that would have killed an unprotected human, but his ship's inertial dampeners kept the crew conscious and functional. The alien plasma bolts passed harmlessly through space where his ship had been moments before. Target is evading, the sensor operator reported, her voice carrying disbelief. Acceleration rates impossible for chemical or fusion propulsion, unknown drive technology. Then get closer, Zek Thanos snarled. Overwhelm their defenses with concentrated fire. The Xanthari ships accelerated toward the human vessel, their biohulls stretching and contracting like muscles as they pushed their organic drives to maximum output. But as they closed the distance, the Defiant demonstrated the second surprise that human engineers had prepared. The ship's weapons were elegantly simple. Kinetic penetrators accelerated to near light speed by magnetic coils. Where the Xanthari expected exotic energy weapons or complex missile systems, they faced something that could have been understood by any human engineer from the 21st century. The difference was in the execution. The first tungsten penetrator punched through the lead bioship's hull like it was made of tissue paper. The dense metal slug carried enough kinetic energy to shatter molecular bonds, creating a wound that the ship's biological systems couldn't heal fast enough. Atmosphere and bodily fluids sprayed into space as the massive vessel began listing to one side. Impossible! Zek Thanos screamed as two more of his ships took crippling hits. Their weapons are primitive projectiles. How are they penetrating our bioarmor? Dr. Amy Patterson watched the engagement from her monitoring station. On Europa, her instruments tracking energy signatures and debris patterns, the human scientist had spent months studying captured samples of Xanthari biotechnology, and her analysis had revealed a critical weakness that the Empire's enemies had never exploited. They've been using the same biological templates for too long, she transmitted to Dan's ship. Their armor is optimized against energy weapons and chemical explosives. They've never faced kinetic penetrators at these velocities. The battle lasted only minutes. When the surviving Xanthari ships finally withdrew, 3 bio-dreadnoughts were drifting wrecks and the others carried wounds that would take months to heal. Fleet Commander Zek Thanos stared at his tactical displays in shock, unable to process what had just happened. For 500,000 years, no enemy had inflicted significant casualties on a Zenthari fleet. The Empire's bioships were supposed to be invincible, their organic hulls capable of healing damage and adapting to new threats. But the humans had struck with such speed and precision that adaptation was impossible. "Withdraw to the outer system," Thanos ordered, his voice hollow with disbelief. "Signal the Empire. Tell them we have encountered resistance." The news of the engagement spread through galactic communication networks within hours. Species that had cowered before Zenthari might for millennia watched in amazement as footage of the battle circulated through secure channels. The impossible had happened. The Empire had been bloodied by a species they had dismissed as primitives. On Earth, the reaction was more measured, but no less significant. President Carol Martinez addressed the planet from the emergency session of the Global Defense Council, her words carried to every corner of humanity's growing interstellar presence. Today we learned that our new neighbors are not as friendly as we had hoped. But we also learned something else. When humanity is threatened, we do not go quietly into the night, we fight back and we win. The massive crystalline screens across the galaxy flickered to life as the transmission began. Emperor Krathmok of the Zenthari Empire stood on his golden throne platform, his reptilian form towering 12 feet above the polished floor of his palace. His scales shimmered with an inner light that spoke of genetic modifications perfected over millennia. Behind him stretched the vast capital city of Vexthara, its biomechanical spires reaching toward alien stars. The Emperor's voice carried across space through quantum relays, reaching every inhabited world in the galaxy. His words were translated into thousands of languages by automated systems, but the arrogance needed no translation. "Citizens of the galaxy, hear the voice of your eternal masters. For 500,000 years, the Zenthari Empire has ruled the stars. We have crushed the mighty Valdorian Federation when they dared challenge our authority. We erased the Quantum Collective from existence when they thought their technology could match ours. The proud Nexarian warriors now serve as our slaves in the deep mines of Korvac Prime." Captain Jake Morrison sat in the Mars Command Center, watching the broadcast alongside his colleagues. The human officer had short brown hair and calm blue eyes that had seen action in the asteroid belt conflicts. Beside him, Ambassador Lisa Carter leaned forward in her chair, her diplomatic training evident in how she analyzed every word. General Pete Rodriguez stood with his arms crossed, his weathered face showing the skepticism of a career military. "Man, this guy really loves himself," Jake muttered, keeping his voice low as the alien emperor continued his speech. "The Zenthari Empire spans 17 galaxies," Krathmok declared, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "Our bioships have conquered 10 million worlds. No species has lasted more than 50 of your pathetic years against our might. We are eternal. We are inevitable. We are the rightful rulers of all life in this universe." The camera angle shifted to show the Emperor's War Council arranged behind him. These were smaller Zenthari, but each one carried scars and modifications that marked them as veterans of countless conquests. Their leader, War Herald Vexitaki, stepped forward when the Emperor gestured. "Let any species that thinks itself strong come forward," Vexitaki announced, his voice carrying a metallic undertone from biomechanical implants in his throat. "Let them test themselves against the eternal Zenthari war machine. We will demonstrate once again why we have never known defeat." On distant worlds, the galaxy's surviving species watched in silence. The aquatic hydrani floated in their atmospheric chambers, their tentacles writhing with nervous energy. The insectoid Clixar huddled in their hive cities, clicking mandibles in what their species used for worried conversation. The few remaining free worlds kept their communications dark, hoping to avoid the Emperor's attention. In the Terran section of the diplomatic quarter on Luna, Ambassador Carter watched the screens with growing concern. Earth had only made contact with galactic civilization 30 years ago, and humanity was still learning about the complex politics of interstellar society. The Zenthari had been mentioned in briefings as a distant threat, but this broadcast suggested they might be looking for new conquests. "Are they talking about us?" asked Dr. Amy Patterson, the xenobiologist who served as Earth's cultural liaison. She had joined the Mars Command Center via holographic link from her research station near Jupiter. Her red hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, and her green eyes showed the curiosity that had made her one of Earth's leading experts on alien psychology. General Rodriguez answered her question with a grunt. "They're talking about everyone, Doc. But we're the newest kids on the block, so we probably look like easy targets." The Emperor's speech continued with what seemed like a catalog of his empire's greatest victories. He described worlds burned, from orbit, species driven to extinction, and entire star systems converted into Xanthari breeding grounds. The translation systems struggled with some concepts, particularly the Xanthari approach to biological warfare that turned enemy populations into raw material for their war machine. 500,000 years, Lisa Carter said quietly, shaking her head. "It's hard to imagine an empire lasting that long. It's hard to imagine anything being that evil for that long," Jake replied, watching as the screen showed footage of Xanthari bioships consuming a planet's atmosphere. The Emperor's tone shifted as he reached the climax of his speech. His scaled face twisted into what humans recognized as a predatory smile, though the expression looked far more threatening on his reptilian features. But perhaps some young species watching this broadcast thinks they might be different. Perhaps some newcomers to the galactic stage believe their primitive technology and untested courage might succeed where ancient civilizations have failed. Krathmok's laugh echoed through the transmission like the sound of breaking glass. "Let them come. Let them try. The Xanthari Empire is always hungry for new conquests, new slaves, new worlds to reshape in our image." War Herald Vextaki stepped forward again, consulting a biomechanical device that seemed to be grafted directly into his forearm. "Our scouts report several species that have achieved interstellar travel in recent centuries. The mammals from the Sol system interest us particularly. Their star charts indicate they have barely left their home system, yet they dare to send representatives to the Galactic Council." The camera focused on the Emperor's face as his smile widened. "Humans, they call themselves. How delightfully primitive. Their entire species has existed for less than 100 galactic cycles. Surely they will provide amusing sport before they join our servant races." The transmission ended with images of the Xanthari fleet, massive biomechanical constructs that dwarfed anything in Earth's navy. The ships moved through space like living creatures, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. The message was clear. This was what awaited any species foolish enough to challenge Xanthari supremacy. In the silence that followed, the humans in Mars Command Center exchanged glances. They had come to the galaxy hoping to find wisdom among the stars, perhaps allies who could help humanity grow and prosper. Instead, they had found an empire that viewed them as nothing more than potential slaves. "Well," General Rodriguez said finally, his voice carrying a tone that his subordinates recognized from briefings before difficult operations, "I guess we know what's coming next." Ambassador Carter nodded slowly, already thinking about the emergency session she would need to call with Earth's leadership. "They think we're going to be easy targets." Captain Morrison stood up from his chair, his jaw set in determination. "Maybe we should show them how wrong they are." The galaxy had heard the Xanthari boast. Most species would respond with fear, submission, or desperate attempts to hide. But humanity had never been most species, and they were about to prove that some targets bite back harder than expected.